After the death of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar yesterday, the Biden-Harris administration expressed optimism that the death of the architect of the October 7th terrorist attack on Israel could possibly lead to a new path forward for the terrorist group. But in a televised remark today, Sinwar's longtime deputy, Khalil al-Yahya, he struck a defiant tone. He said that Hamas is going to continue right down the same path that it's been going. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made it very clear that Israel's not going to relent in its war against Hamas. And you may have heard it just a few moments ago, but he said that this is not the end of the war in Gaza. It is the beginning of the end. So what can we expect in the coming days? Joining me now to discuss this is Chris Mitchell. He's a Middle East Bureau Chief at CBN News. Chris, always great to have you on the program. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be with us.
It's great to be with you, Jody.
All right, let's begin with your take on the death of Sinwar. This is big news.
It's huge news, Jody, and something people have been hoping for, praying for well over a year now, since October 7th. As Netanyahu said, it's really not the end, but the beginning of the end. And you can see that the war wouldn't have ended without Sinwar either being captured or killed. I'll tell you some of the reaction here in Israel. Israel-Hamas is one of Israel's major newspapers. It had a headline in Hebrew, and I'll read the biblical reference. It's from Psalm chapter 18, verse 37. It says, I pursued my enemies and I overtook them. And then earlier, Yoav Gallant, he's the defense minister, he did on X, he quoted Leviticus chapter 26, verse 7. It says, and you shall chase your enemies and they shall fall before you by the sword. So there's a lot of relief here in Israel. A lot of celebrations yesterday about the mastermind, the architect of October 7th that created so much havoc, so much misery here in Israel, and the worst attack against the Jewish people and the state of Israel since the Holocaust.
Yeah, it really is amazing. And reports I've seen, Chris, it would indicate that even the Israeli military was surprised that they were able to encounter Sinwar above ground while just doing routine patrol. What do you make of the circumstance that led to all of this?
Well, some of the backstory, Jody, is the fact that it had been reported that Sinwar was surrounded by maybe as many as 20 hostages with a suitcase full of explosives ready to detonate if any attempt was made to capture him or release the hostages. But what happened actually is in Rafah, in one of those sections in Rafah, there was reservists and trainees that were actually sort of mopping up in that area. And they came across 3 terrorists who came into that particular building, and they pursued them. There was a tank shell that was lobbed in there. And actually, so it wasn't a sort of a special operations, an elite unit. It was really just simply reservists and trainees that came across him. When they discovered the body, saw his face, they thought, well, this looks a lot like Sinwar. So a lot of people are saying it was a miracle and something that really just opened up for these soldiers at this time. And actually, many people think he was very close to what's called the Philadelphia corridor, which is the border between Egypt and Gaza. He had false passports and may have been trying to escape out of Gaza into Egypt and trying to save himself.
Wow. Well, I would just add, Chris, and I agree, this is a miracle, but I would just say it is yet another miracle that we have seen. There just seems so many things that are unexplainable other than the good hand of God looking over Israel at this time. It's just amazing, and this is yet another example of that. We have some Hamas leaders, nonetheless, that are remaining defiant. I referenced one just a few moments ago, and this comes even in spite of Benjamin Netanyahu referring to this as just being the beginning of the end. What do you think is next in all of this? What is this development going to lead to?
Well, I think, first of all, Jody, one of the questions that people began to ask themselves, including myself, right after Sinwar was killed, was what is this going to mean for the hostages? Are they going to be released? What does this mean for Hamas? Are they going to soften their tone? Perhaps if once their leader is done, Would they surrender? The Hamas leader that you quoted, gave one indication. They're not going to lessen their stand. And they made two demands, the same demands that Yahya Sinwar had made for months. First of all, there would be a ceasefire, and then there would be a withdrawal of IDF forces. Those are both non-starters for Israel. And then the question many people are asking, what about the hostages? Will they be released? Could they be released? It seems like Israel will continue to do what they can to make sure that Hamas is fully defeated, that it won't be able to govern Gaza anymore, and the release of the hostages. Those are the three official war goals at the very beginning of this conflict back in October, Jody. But what's next is really the big question right now. It looks like more of the same in terms of the military action in a pessimistic view of the hostages right now. But as you said, this was a miracle with Sinwar being killed. And that's a result, many people believe, of so many people around the world praying for the release of the hostages and for the defeat of this terror group.
And it looks like we're just one step closer, at least to the defeat, and we need to continue praying for those hostages. Of course, Sinwar was based in Gaza, and he had some of his deputies that live in exile in Qatar. So what does all this mean, Chris, for the overall Hamas command structure? This has to be an enormous blow to their structure.
Yeah, very much so. And it follows a year of fighting the IDF forces where they have killed perhaps as many as 20,000 or more terrorists and, decimated their infrastructure, their tunnel systems, much of their command and control, as many of their munitions. You mentioned the top leaders of Hamas. Khaled Mashal is maybe the last remaining one. He's in Qatar, he's in Doha, and he's also living in luxury. And it also brings up the question about the influence of Qatar. Many people have questioned that. They're hosting these Hamas leaders and also have been funding Hamas for years and actually giving them billions of dollars through that time. So it remains to be seen what will happen to that leadership. But as you said, it really has decimated the leadership of Hamas. And this follows several weeks where Israel has been able to decimate and literally decapitate much of the leader of Hezbollah up in Lebanon.
Absolutely remarkable. Well, Chris, as we have this latest development and hopeful developments can unfold as a result of this, how would you say we can most effectively pray for Israel and the leadership right now?
Well, I would say pray for the release of the hostages that so many have been praying fervently for a long time. Pray for the comfort for their family members, and continue to pray for wisdom for the leadership of Israel, for Prime Minister Netanyahu specifically. I really think he's showing himself to be the Churchill of our time, really on the tip of the spear fighting for Western civilization. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem and pray for comfort for the Israeli people that have gone through so much, as well as the Jewish people around the world. And they're celebrating right now, Tony, the Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot, celebrating and commemorating how God protected the Israelites during their time in the wilderness and brought them into the promised land. Here we are, thousands of years later, they're back in the promised land. Absolutely
remarkable. Well, Lord, you've heard this request, and we ask you to answer these prayers in Jesus' name. In Jesus' name. Chris Mitchell, Middle East Bureau Chief for CBN News, thank you, as always, for joining us. God bless you.